Quick, back off! Zero's coming! She's coming! I don't want to die! No! Oh. Hello everyone and welcome today. Today we are going to be talking about Drakengard 3. Now, I did have a video showing off the limited edition version of Drakengard 3, so instead of diddle-daddle through all that stuff again, I would recommend going and looking up the Drakengard 3 unboxing. So, Drakengard 3, where did I put that? I had the deal. Now, I already did say that the cover is unique to the collector's edition version only, and, you know, I get a nice soundtrack. But, oh, and this time I don't actually have Brick in it, I actually have the game. But anyway, so, I finally beaten Drakengard 3. I have not played the DLC story campaigns and currently debating about getting them. So, let's of course get on to the point. I will not be talking about the stories or that are enhanced towards the game or the DLC I just mentioned. We're just talking about the standalone game by its current self. So, Drakengard 3. What is there to really say about this title? It's a sequel to a series that has two main entries and a spin-off title of an ending in the first game. And I have to say, playing all the games in the order, I have to say each one has always been an improvement over the previous one. While Neo is different from Drakengard 1 and 2's Dynasty Warrior style kind of gameplay, Drakengard 2 did improve a lot of gameplay, and Neo not only improved a lot of better gameplay, it was just gorgeous looking. Like, it was really well made, in my opinion. It was probably one of the best games that the company that programmed Drakengard 1, 2, and Neo ever probably produced. Which, sadly, after Neo, they got devoured by another company. And I believe, I might be incorrect, but I believe that company also perished shortly after. So, Drakengard 3 was made by a completely different team of programmers, and I don't really see their logo anywhere, which is always a bad sign of giving credit. I believe they were called Axis Games, and not as Axis as in like that Axis, as in like ACESS Axis, but, and I'm not really familiar with what games they've made, but I can tell you that they were both, they basically were lent the Unreal Engine. And the only other game I know that Square Enix had any involvement in with the Unreal Engine was, what was that 360 game that was made by the creator of the Saga series, we had like military units. The name escapes me, damn it. But I feel this suffers the exact same problems that game has when it comes to its programming. I feel like the team didn't know how to utilize the Unreal Engine properly. While Drakengard 3 I wouldn't say is an awful game, it surely does have problems. And admittedly, every game in the Drakengard series, you can say those problems. Drakengard 1's camera was ungodly awful. I really wish there was a lot better character involvement in Drakengard 2, and you could say the story was the weakest in the entire series, even when compared to Drakengard 3. Neo's world was so small and compact, which is such a shame for such a gorgeous game. In Drakengard 3 is horrifying frame rate. Now, of course, frame rate is not exactly something new. The PS2 titles actually had this issue too, but usually when it came to throwing out giant explosion magic that's like, you know, devastating everything around you, that's not what's causing a lot of the chugging on here. And, you know, that kind of chugging could be more understandable, but we're just talking about normal gameplay. Drakengard 3 is not huge, great, horrifying, burn your eyeballs out graphics, so it's kind of a shame, really, to think from Neo to Drakengard 3 there's just awful frame rate, to be honest. And I know recently I've been talking about frame rate, and I actually really hate doing that so much because I don't, for one, I don't really care about frame. I like Drakengard 3. I want to illustrate that. I'm not trying to say I hate Drakengard 3. The overall gameplay I enjoyed. Melee, I can't say. It's very rare for frame rate to really bother me, and it did bother me a little because it just happened a lot. And I really feel like the development team just didn't know what they were doing with the Unreal Engine when it came to the game. Now, when it comes to the story and the characters and that lives up a lot more to Drakengard's standards of being bizarre, fucking weird. So, don't feel like the gameplay will completely destroy the experience. Now, as I said in my First Impressions video, Drakengard 3 is kind of a mash of Drakengard elements and Neo elements. It's more action-oriented like Neo, and much less Dynasty Warriors like Drakengard, but a lot of weird story elements and shit continue from both games. Dragons, packs, and being a prequel to the first game, there's a lot of connections to Drakengard 1. Now, there are multiple weapons, and there are special combo skills associated with each weapon, kind of like in the Drakengard series. But unlike Drakengard, there's only a few different types, and multiple weapons can have those different types. As opposed to Drakengard 1 and 2, where every single weapon had a unique, like, special thing to some extent. Sometimes some will kind of cop out, clone, mixtured ideas, but in the end, there was a lot of weapon variety of magic and stuff, and that's really been cut back in Drakengard 3. And it has a stamina system where you can parry, block, and those said special attacks use stamina. And when you run out of stamina, some of the Dark Souls, you leave yourself open, and now, I do like some of the improvements to the dragon system, and at the same time, it was really disappointing. And I did talk about that in my First Impressions also. Mikhail, your dragon partner, you basically don't have strict flying levels only, though those exist. There are a few just strictly Panzer Dragoonish like levels where you're shooting the living crap out of stuff. But for the most part, the stages Mikhail's in have you riding him in a section killing shit. And you can either fly or run around on the ground with him. And that gives you the ability to blow fire while on the ground, while you can do a dash attack while in the air, along with the normal fireball spewing. I kind of like that idea, but considering in the entire game there's only 2 stages that are, well, okay, wait, I'll give it back actually. There's 3 stages that are relatively big to make use of that. Seems so sad when Drakengard 1 and 2 you just brought Dragon, okay. But you get the point. Drakengard 1 and 2, basically outside stage, you can get on your dragon, wreak havoc upon the ground. You don't have that power in Drakengard 3. They're set scripted stages, and there's only a few of them. Which is a real shame, because actually, Mikhail, like, I can understand why some people hate him. He has, like, a squeaky-ass voice, but, you know, he's really a sympathetic character. And aside from the very disgusting scene where you first really get to see him and some dialogue suggestions of things he's done, I think he's an okay character, to be honest. But, you know, I'm a pretty sappy character, so. Now, there's no, like, armor or anything in the game. None of the games have ever dealt with armor or anything. Potions make a return, like in Neo, when Drakengard 1 and 2 didn't have potions or anything. You just got orbs of life for big combos, which that also continues. You can get orbs to continue getting health. There's also the red orbs, kind of returning, but they function differently. In Drakengard, basically the red orbs basically just let out shitloads of energy, and then there was a really powerful red orb that just fucking made you like berserk temporarily. The red orbs in Drakengard 3, if you make them appear through combos, will give you additional blood, and the blood allows you to use your tonal mode, which is basically a berserk mode, where you just invincible. There's only like one thing, well, multiple, but with for one race of something that can actually hurt you in internal mode. Aside from that, you're like invincible to everything, and you just fucking claw the living fuck out of everything. But yeah. So, music. I didn't really talk about music in my first impressions because the actual gameplay music doesn't really stand out too much. The single from Neil returns for any of the lyric songs, which there are not a lot of them. Most of the songs with lyrics are boss fights, the opening, the special unique song for the end, and Zero's theme and such. But she returns to sing, and for the songs she is involved with, gorgeous. If you love Neo's music, you should check out some of the songs that she did in Drakengard 3. If you like the Drakengard 1 music versus 2, Drakengard 2 was always considered kind of inferior when it came to story music because it dumbed down everything more into a normal anime norm and not as freaky weird as the rest of the series is. The music actually may kind of reminiscence to Drakengard 1 a bit. Some of the boss themes are fucking downright weird, and that's basically what Drakengard 1's music was. A lot of weird types of music, like medieval rap music, like with skipping disc effects and shit. It's a very odd idea, and I'd say Drakengard 3 kind of takes a more modern twist to that with more modern music elements, but twisting them in weird ways. But most of the music is enjoyable. But I'd say, well, Neo had almost a very loving music track that most people loved the whole thing. Drakengard 3 is probably going to be more like, I like this, and the rest. So, now the story. Drakengard 3's story, for just a brief story. We'll go into major spoiler stuff later. A brief story is basically you play as Zero. She has 5 sisters. Each one are named 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And they're all tonals, and they like swooped among this land of war and death and brought peace to the land. But for some reason, Zero decides to murder her sisters, and she has a dragon, and she tries to do such, failing. Her dragon dies, gets reincarnated into Mikkel, forgets his pet. He basically forgot everything. He's just basically like a newborn, so he has a whole new personality and everything. And you basically take place a year after that, and you basically saw on your quest to go murder your sisters again. Similar to the series, there are multiple endings, and a lot of fucked up shit goes on. Different people die, and that's nothing new to Drakengard. If you're familiar with the series, there's a lot of carnage, death, and twisted fucking endings, with that one ending that either brings irony or some kind of smile to your face, perhaps. Of course, we're not going to ruin that unless you want to be in for the spoiler section, which of course will be later. Now, you can unlock costumes. Apparently, you can get a costume unlocked. I read about it. I did not get it, so I'm now kind of questioning whether that is, because I read if you beat the game you get it, so I'm not 100% sure on that. I do have costumes from the collector's edition, and they are very reminiscent of main characters, Kaim and Neil and Kaine. Leaving out Drakengard 2's main character, oddly enough. Considering you get Kaims. So, I don't know. Maybe they'll... a lot of people do consider Drakengard 2 to be the inferior out of the bunch. I think Drakengard 3 and 2 are going to probably be tied for people's weakest link in the series, though. But I'll explain why I don't think it's as weak as 2 when we get to the spoiler section, of course. Now, a new concept, and again, this is something I already went over. My first question is that you have companions. Dynasty Warriors, I think it was sometime in the late PS2 era, they started introducing certain games that had companions where you could have two little NPCs running around with you, and you could change them out to be spearmen, ninja, and shit like that. Well, you basically have a system like that where you can get four companions, pick two of them, they each have a specific weapon, which are ironically the four different weapon types you can use. And they're all sick, twisted people, just like most people in this universe of games. So I won't really spoil their personalities too much. But they are basically sick and twisted and weird. Aside from that, side quest wise and such, you have requests from the shopkeeper to go and basically do kill missions, which drop items or destroy so many chests within a time limit and stuff. There's also payday, which is how you earn a lot of gold in the game to buy weapons and upgrade them. Again, stealing from Neil, you can now buy some weapons, but there are also weapons to still be found in the game, and also have to get base materials of different colors to upgrade certain ranks. They have 4 ranks, just like the series is normally known for. They again have the stories of the individual weapons, which if you enjoyed that returns again. Now, gold is something I really hated in this fucking game. It feels like some kind of fucking game that was being designed to have fucking pay for gold, but it didn't actually have it. It took me quite a while to get a lot of gold, and maybe I'm just complaining about that, but the side missions to me are just so freaking boring as hell. There's no real substance to them, and some of them are really fucking annoying, so I can't say I enjoyed any of the side content that was from the story itself. But you'll have to do some of it. Payday is the fastest way to get gold. Personally, I recommend the desert area payday, get that available. But of course, to stop you from spamming the living crap out of payday over and over again, which would make money actually fast to get, you actually have to complete 3 other side quests in that locale to unlock payday again. So that slows down that whole process and makes it so boring. Now, you do get some other benefits too, like carrying more items in that, which, depending on how hard you got the game set to or how much you suck, can be incredibly useful, of course, because sometimes there are moments where you're going to get your ass kicked until you start knowing the exploits of how to walk around certain enemies or that, or what works against them. You might get your ass handed to you quite a lot. Not exactly a hand-holding game if you're into that kind of thing, which I don't think a lot of my viewers are, but so anyway, I think that's a general idea of Drakengard 3 of what I thought without spoiling anything yet. Do I recommend Drakengard 3? If you're a fan of Drakengard 1, 2, and Neil, like the whole series as a whole, I don't think it's going to be horrible. Don't go in thinking it's going to better any of them, though. I think Neo is a superior game to Drakengard. And I think overall, Drakengard 1... I know it's an old game, but I think Drakengard 1 kind of beats it too, to be honest. And that also has to do with an element that will be spoiler territory. So, you know, if you want to stick around for that. It's not a $60 game, so it is slightly cheaper than a brand new game normally is. If you feel like it doesn't live up to its current new price, you can wait for it to go down a bit. And of course, there are available places to import this for the European crowd that didn't get a physical version with the limited editions because Square Enix is fucking cheap, just like Ubisoft won't give America fucking Child of Life for the Vita physical, you son of a bitch. Oh, that's a whole different topic. Conscious man. Oh my, I seem to have something stuck in there. But, Drakengard 3, I recommend if you're a big fan of the series overall. I don't think you'll be incredibly disappointed, but depending on what aspects you like more and less, you might have some hiccups of disappointment to some glees here and there. Oh, and I didn't talk about the voice acting, actually. I know there's a lot of people saying, the voice acting is awful, and, you know what the sad thing is, for all reality, voice acting varies from person to person. Different people have different opinions. I liked it Bravely Default's voice acting. I know there's one guy, what was his name? Kaz Reviews. I watched his videos occasionally. That he said the voice acting was god awful, and I really disagree. But that's just their opinion, and I don't have a problem with them thinking they're bad. The level hate kind of thing with it, and I personally think the voice acting's fitting of most of the characters. I'd say Sent, I think, went for kind of a different voice, but that's again just me. If you got the collector's edition, you do get the Japanese voice acting, which I think you have to buy separately. I do not think that's free. I doubt it. That is also huge. That's like, I think that was like 9 gigabytes, which I had no freaking, I wasn't downloading that, but yeah, that's the case there. I think the voice acting was okay, but if that's a big deal, you can get the Japanese track. Sadly, it probably will cost you money. But, if you want to check out some of the voice acting, check some clips out. There's, of course, 5 million videos all the way by now of it. So, anyway, moving on, spoiler territory. So, spoil. Oh, wait, actually, yeah, I recommend the game if you big fan. If you came into the series from Neo and never played any of the actual Drakengard games, gameplay-wise, this game's probably going to be incredibly disappointing to you. Because Neo, in my opinion, I'd say Neo's probably the best one. Definitely if we're just simply talking about gameplay. The gameplay was really well handled in Neo. And if they kind of made it more Dynasty Warriors, that could have actually been kicked ass too. But, simply, if you're coming in from Neo, this game's probably going to look like a disappointing. If you're coming in from Drakengard, then Neo, or both, you'll probably be a lot more forgiving of some of the weaknesses. Because the Drakengard series has had more weaknesses than Neo does overall, in my opinion, from a gameplay design. So, those are my recommendations and thoughts on that. So anyway, back where we go with spoilers. Okay, so spoiling territory. So, you got 4 endings, and most of them end in massacre death of all the characters in some way, usually. And with a few touching choices, like one where Zero sacrifices herself to save Mikkel and that. But anyway, really when it comes down to what the fuck's going on is, apparently there's a android. And this character I actually really hate. I'm kind of curious at the same time, because if he was able to actually make a sequel again, I would be curious what he did with this character. But as it stands, this character is annoying as fuck because they don't really go into her very well. They don't really talk about her background or anything. Maybe there will be some side stories or something they'll talk more about. That might clear it up. But as just going by the game, she just kind of really bothers me. But apparently she is recording a record of history, and she ends up in the situation where she's trying to get time to basically not go to the end of the world. Now, the main character, Zero, if you ever look at a art or anything, she has a flower in her eye. This flower actually, technically, as far as I understand, I have not read the book with the short stories, but to my understanding, that does explain some of it. There's also a short comic series that was available in Japan that takes place during their childhood that explains a lot more about the flower thing. But apparently, basically Zero, her mother died, her father was abusive, sold her to sex slavery. Then she escaped from that, got betrayed, got robbed, got beat the living fuck out of, and ended up in some fucking castle's dungeon with a bunch of other girls. They died of starvation, shit, and she's slowly dying. And then for some reason there's a flower in the cell, and this starts growing in her eye, and she comes back to life. Now, the flower wouldn't let her die, and she tried to commit suicide, so the flower resurrected the other girls in the cell with her and gave them, they're all linked to the flower in her eye, and the flower apparently did this just in case Zero somehow did kill herself. And basically the flower wants to destroy the world! A flower! And admittedly, again, side stories and stuff might give more context to this. But in the game itself, I don't see any context of why a flower wants to destroy the world. That and the android thing are probably my biggest what the fucks in the game. Aside from that, I'm pretty comfortable with most of the game stuff and plot holes and plot twists and shit like that. So, Zero's goal, even though you're led to believe in the beginning of the game she's doing it to take all her sister's power, is actually gathering all her sister's power so she can use Mikkel to kill her. Because apparently, for some reason, dragons hunger for this flower. And it's briefly explained by the android late in the game that the dragons, for some reason, are hunger for the power of these flowers. And thus, the flowers became much more of an extinct thing. So her plan is kill her sisters, gather all the power, and have Mikkel kill her, thus ending the terror of the flowers' want to destroy the world. In the final true ending path of the game, all her sisters start going insane, and the flower starts controlling them, trying to get them to destroy the fucking world and shit. So, lots of chaos, mayhem, death, and kill and that. And you get to the end after you kill one, and Zero and Mikkel have a really touching, sad scene. Well, because Zero treats Mikkel like a child throughout most of the game, and at this point she's like, "You've grown up, Mikkel. You've became strong," and such. And then, explains that he needs to kill her now and that. And then the final battle begins, and if you ever made it to the absolute end of Drakengard 1, this is where your jaw is going to go because it's a complete mimicry and slash homage to Drakengard 1's final boss. Yes, music rhythm! Mayhem, mayhem, whoo! Again. That's right. You get to control Mikkel by himself while he has to murder the flower. Now, the flower blooms in the cathedral city, the ruins of some ancient civilization that looks more like Tokyo, and I'll go a little into more of that suspicion story-wise. But basically, the flower blooms, and Zero comes out of the center looking like the monstrosity. And you play a music game. She shoots white wings out of her, and all Mikkel can do is defend against them. So you have to defend against all the notes. So again, it's essentially a music game. Now, first it seems like it's easier than Drakengard 1, but by the time you start realizing what's going on, every single sister blooms out of the flower after a certain portion of the song. The tempo and the kind of mood the song has changes with each sister. You go from 0, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and then you do Zero song again on fucking hard mode. Now, from 0 to 4, it's pretty standard and acceptably manageable. When you hit 3 is where the game starts making you rage. Now, a lot of people have hated Drakengard 1's final boss, but admittedly, at least it let you see all the wings, and you could learn it. Now, the thing, I think the guy I think he wanted people to actually kind of get into the song. But, there's just some people who ain't going to be good at everything. Nobody's good at everything. Some people are going to have the weakness of not being able to really do this blindly. And sadly, the game actually deems you necessary to do in certain situations. Because by 3, there's going to be times where the camera's actually going to start doing weird shit. Like there's a part of her song where it zooms really close to her head. So all you're seeing is the note barely leave her mouth and an off screen. And you better hope you're in that song now. And that is not even close to the ridiculousness. When it gets to 2, it gets a little more action-oriented. 2 is a little manageable. 1 is where it gets batshit ridiculous. 1, there's like this whole scene where the camera's like, woo, 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 woo. It's like, what the fuck? It's just... And I don't know if it had to do with how the arena around each of the Eternals, or if they actually intentionally programmed it like this. And that's a really difficult call, but to be honest, I don't actually think it was fair for people who are really bad at rhythm games. It took me a long fucking time to beat this fucking boss. And while I enjoyed the living fuck out of it, it just kinda is a punch in the face when you do this weird ass shit where you can't see the notes well. Now, admittedly, if they did all the way to the black, and where they do that last note before the dialogue kicks off, that, okay, I would have accepted that fuck off. But all the fucking weird camera shit just makes it all torturous once you get to 3. And you better really get in that song. Really into that song if you want to beat this thing. But it's a really good homage to Drakengard 1 aside from that. The song, I love the song. I've been listening to it over and over again on my phone in free time. I really like the song. And the ending. So in the end, the android ended up dying to pin down 1 so Zero could kill her. And that ended up killing her because Zero attacked through her. Apparently, after the ending where Mikhail destroys the flower and that, they get the Eternals all sealed in another dimension. The android starts talking about how she has a feeling they will somehow meet again. And you see her walking up to the destroyed android and find out there's more of her. And they just like salute the dead android and go off recording more of the new history that has been constructed. And she then starts recording in front of the player like a YouTube video or something. And she basically says she hopes y'all meet each other again. And thank you for playing Breaking the Fourth Wall. Which are all fourth wall breaking moments. And I did talk about those of my first impressions. How like in the beginning when you killing 5, there's like this weird censor the shits to violence and shows a kitty drawing, and then there's a part where one of the assistants you get is beating the living shit out of a dead body, and all the audio's fucking muted saying that the audio isn't fit for human consumption. There was like 3 moments of random bleeping, which is weird because there's all kinds of foul mouth talk, and then it's like beep 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 beep. I mean, and a lot of those are fourth wall breaking, and most of them to me felt unnecessary. Like, the android, I guess I could understand breaking the fourth wall. That's kind of like how Kyoto was designed. But a lot of the other Kyotos just come off really weird when they do it. So the ending. There's not too much else to the ending. We don't know what happens to Mikhail. The Eternals seem clearly like how I guessed way back when Drakengard 3 was first announced, that the Eternals are attached to the monstrosity, or the flower is. And I guess the flower just continued corrupting them so much that that's what became of them. I mean, they look like the very image of the monstrosity, except with hair and shit, and, you know, each one's more shaped like the sisters and that. So take that as you will. A lot of people were hoping the city that the cathedral is at, that's in Drakengard 1 and 3, would be explained in Drakengard 3, because it looks like a modern skyscraper building ruins, and it's hardly explained in Drakengard 1. And Drakengard 3 basically says an ancient civilization, which is basically about the most you got from Drakengard 1. Ancient civilization existed long ago. Supposedly they found it all magic in their world, and something happened to them. They just... Way back when we only had Drakengard 1 2, there was like a theory that because of Drakengard 1's ending, like the final ending, which at the time was considered a joke ending, some people thought maybe it was a sign that there was some kind of weird time loop happening with Tokyo because of what happens in the final ending of Drakengard 1, and somehow dragged Tokyo into Drakengard's world or the past, depending on at that time. But now we know it's an alternate dimension kind of thing because of Neo. New speculation has opened up that possibly the events of Neo and that have somehow thrown Tokyo and its ruins into Drakengard's universe, starting a whole with a cycle system where it goes from Drakengard 3-1 to Neo's weird universe, and some about Neo somehow ends up sending the Tokyo ruins to... I mean, it's really early stages of a lot of people making theories and that, and I'll enjoy hearing some of those theories. And I will probably make a video talking about how I think about some of that stuff more separately than that. But I kind of want to add my thoughts about that kind of stuff. So pretty much I say I called it. Called it about the whole monstrosity thing. So anyway, that's spoilers, and again, I think the game lives up to a lot of the twisted story in that the gameplay has a slight letdown to it, but it's not anything destroyed. I mean, it's still playable, it still functions, and, that's better than at least a game that's broken, right? It's not perfect, and aside from Neo to me has always been the most perfect game out of the series. In Drakengard 3 would be a lie to say it isn't a step back from Neo, which is a real shame. But I don't think it's awful. I think it's worth looking into if you're a fan of the Italian series. But if you only came from Neo, you're going to probably see this game as a disappointment. And like I said, there was a completely new programming team that developed this game using the Unreal Engine, and I'm pretty sure they probably weren't very familiar with the Unreal Engine, which ended up with a lot of issues. I mean, keep in mind, my first impressions, which, I mean, it requires 5 gigabytes of install, and it chugs still. It's chugs stills and it has loading. The game was clearly not optimized very well. And, I can forgive loading screens when it's a really kick-ass game and that, but the chugging thing just seems really annoying when you have 5 gigs of the game installed on your hard drive. Forced. Like, maybe if it was something like GTA where, it was an option and, downloading it onto your hard drive would improve it, that'd be more understandable. But when you install 5 gigabytes and it still does this shit, it just really feels like it just wasn't optimized right. And those are flaws, and it doesn't bother me as much, but some people will be like, there are some people that shit just drives up the wall. I mean, after all, the really big PC people, obviously care a lot about their frames per second. So, for you, this game will probably make you commit suicide. So, if you're a fan of the series, check it out. If you're a fan of Neo, I'd say try it, but you might have more of a metal tone. So anyway, those are my thoughts of Drakengard 3. If you have any questions, leave them down below. And maybe in the future we'll see into the DLC realm of Drakengard 3. Until then, I'm going to play a very crazy indie game about strategizing werewolves and lots of running around as lumberjacks. Until next time, everyone, the Mad Overlord has spoken. And I need to return to the battlefield, because there's still some Dark Souls to be found.